Hi guys, welcome to Coturnix Corner. My name's Terry, and in this video I wanted to revisit the COMFORTPLAST quail cage system, which was sent over to me by hatchingtime.com. About a month and a half ago or so, we did a review video on this caging system, and I gave it pretty high marks. I just want to say that I stand behind that review, and I'm still very happy with this cage system. After having the cage for a couple months and using it, I have come up with a couple modifications that I've done to the cage, which in my case makes it work out a little bit better. I also wanted to address one issue that I read about online, and that was a couple people had some problems with the casters snapping off the bottom of the cage when they were moving them. I haven't experienced that, but I can say that if you're trying to move the cage system with a lot of weight on it, you still got all your birds in here, you still got all the feed troughs full and a full water container. If those casters hit a rough surface or a pebble or something and you try to force it, yes, you can snap off a caster. But if you take the precautions to empty the water container, you could probably still leave all the birds inside and probably still leave the feed troughs attached and not have any issues. You just have to be aware of what you're moving that cage across, and just be careful as you're moving it. Okay, one of the first modifications that I made to the cage, and it's really not a modification as much as it is a change out, I guess you'd call it. The manure trays that came with the system were the black plastic pans, which you know, they fit underneath the cages perfectly, and they had a nice high side on them, 1.5 inch tall side, so the manure is not going to build up and spill off the sides. But what I found out was that the birds could back up to the front of the cage, poop out the cage, and the droppings would actually land in the feed troughs on the cages below it. No matter how I situated the plastic trays, it still kept happening. I also mentioned in the review video that these metal automotive drip pans fit perfectly under these cages, and I switched over to using these. I don't use the black plastic ones anymore. I'm using the automotive drip pans, and the reason is these pans reach all the way out to the edge of the egg rollout trays, so any manure that comes out through the front of the cage is going to land on this pan and not in the feed trough below it. Okay, the next modification, and this is the one I'm going to do today, and this is the one I wanted to share with you. I've been actually thinking about this from day one when I first got the cages, but I figured I would test them out first using the cages as they were shipped. But I saw last week online that somebody had already done this idea, and he seemed pretty happy with it, and it seemed like it would fit my needs, so I'm going to do the exact same thing. And if you've got a caging system and you want to give your birds a little more room, you can. What they're doing is cutting out the center sections to make this whole tier one cage. Instead of having 3 cages, you have one larger cage that the birds can, you know, move back and forth in. Each individual cage is 12 inches wide, 18 inches deep. So that's 1.5 foot of square footage. If you take out the center dividers, you've got 36 inches wide and 18 inches deep, and I think that's 13.5 square feet. But for me, the main reason I wanted to expand the cages into one larger unit is, one, it's going to give my birds more room. They can actually move around a little bit more and, you know, get exercise and whatnot. And 2, as built, they only have 1 water nipple per cage. And if one of them nipples were to become plugged, that unit would be totally without water. So I like the idea of having a redundant watering system to where, you know, they've got 3 different water sources to choose from. If one gets clogged, they still got 2 other ones that they can use. Okay, so the first thing you're going to need to cut the center dividers out, I found a hacksaw blade, works the easiest. I tried to get a die grinder in there, but it was a little bit too big. But I imagine if you had one of them small Dremel tools with a cutting blade on it, you could probably get in there and cut it pretty easily. But a hacksaw blade works pretty good. You're also going to need a glove so you don't cut your hand, and a Sharpie so you can mark the areas that you want to cut, just so you don't go outside the lines and accidentally cut too far in or outside the area that you want to cut. Okay, first thing you want to do is remove the doors. I imagine you could do it with the doors on, but it's just a lot easier. You don't have them flapping around while you're trying to cut. And to remove them, just open them and push the top clip over, pull the middle clip towards you, and then just turn it sideways and it will come right out. I'm also going to take the water container off the top just to make sure that it doesn't fall and break that. Okay, let me see if you can, I'm going to turn this a little bit so you can see where I'm going with this. Here is where we're going to be cutting. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with a marker and I am going to cut, or I'm going to mark the plastic pieces that I want to cut. And on the front, you want to stay one width of the, we'll call it wiring, the structure of the wall. You want to leave that intact for the front structure of the cage. And then you're going to come in, I'm going to try to count these. Okay, you're going to come in 7 inches on that. I believe that's right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 7 inches will give you your depth. And I think you could actually go one more on that, and I think I will, just to give me a little more room in there. But you don't want to take too much out because you don't want to jeopardize the integrity of the cage. So we're going to come to this point here. Okay, I'm going to grab this little camera and I'm going to try to stick it inside the cage so you can see where my marks are. Because there's one part on the front, because these floors are sloped, there's one part on the front that is actually part of the structure, but as you go towards the back, it drops down to the floor level. I think I explained that right. Okay, you can see where I stayed back one row of wire from the front of the cage, and then along the bottom you can see that there's an area that starts out about a ½ inch above the bottom, and then it goes back flush to the bottom towards the back, and that's to make up for the angle of the flooring. You do not want to cut those pieces right there flush with the floor, or you're going to have an issue with the structural integrity of the front of the cage. What we're trying to do is open the cages up without hurting the structural parts of the cages. So, also, I stayed down one level from the top, or one row of wire from the top, I'm going to call it. Okay, so now that we've got both of our center dividers cut out, you can see we still have a little bit on the back that's going to hold for structural integrity, but we still have plenty of room on the inside for them to transverse all 3 areas and access the watering cups in all 3 cages. And what you could do is these pieces down here, if you wanted to, you could take a sander and kind of sand them smooth, but they're not really rough, so I'm not going to worry about them. Okay, so we've got our center pieces cut out. We've got our doors rehung. All we got left to do is reinstall the feed trough and the watering container, and then put the birds back in. So guys, if you're thinking about increasing the floor space of your COMFORTPLAST quail cages, I think this option's a good idea. It's going to give your birds a little bit more room to transverse back and forth, so they're actually getting a little more exercise. You're also going to have a watering system redundancy just in case one of your waterers should fail. So guys, I hope this helped out. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do so. It helps me out and you'll get notified of any new and upcoming videos. I want to thank you for taking the time to join us today, guys. Stay safe and we'll see you on the next one.